Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Joining me now is Congressman Nick Langworthy. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Brittany.
Earlier this week, we saw police raid Columbia University after demonstrators took over Hamilton Hall on campus. This action resulted in over 100 arrests. So what's your reaction to what we've seen unfold on campuses across the country? And more importantly, Columbia, because Columbia is in New York, a state you represent.
Well, I was very pleased to see the NYPD come in and take care of business because the American people have watched this unfold over the last week to 10 days, these protests on campuses. I mean, young people who have had their minds polluted into becoming sympathizers for terrorist organizations. It's misinformation that they're festering with. They don't know why they're protesting. In some of the video clips, it's really a sad commentary. But I think this is basically the manifestation of what we've seen come for some time, really since October 7th. You have an anti-Semitism problem on America's campuses. You have very liberal professors that promote a culture that is downright anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, and pro-Hamas. Now, you have these young people protesting for Gaza. We don't want to see any civilians hurt any more than have to be. But there's a horrible war going on that was brought on by the attacks of October 7th. We had a ceasefire on October 6th. There can be a ceasefire again if they can just return the hostages. But these young people that are so idealistic, that are just looking for a cause, they want to be a past generation, that was fighting for civil rights in the United States, what their parents or grandparents were doing on campuses. And they're just so sadly mistaken. You're watching, this privilege in these students that are going to colleges that cost $90,000, $100,000, and they think they're going to create unrest without consequences. I was very pleased to see the NYPD clean up that campus, arrest the perpetrators, and just get that entire assembly scattered, because these people have woken up a silent majority in this country that are done with academia. They're done with what's happening on America's campuses, and it's time that we reclaim some of that. I know my staff is working right now with me on looking for a legislative solution, because we have foreign nationals in this country currently on a student visa that are out there spewing anti-Semitic rhetoric, anti-American rhetoric on our campuses. And I want a legislative solution to cancel those student visas for people that perpetrate this.
Congressman, you bring up a really interesting point, and a lot of other people have brought it up as well, that we have seen protests on college campuses for decades now, anti-war, civil rights, amongst other things. How are these protests different from them?
The difference here is, when you start hearing someone chant from the river to the sea, that means the extermination of Jews. This is code language, and some of it harkens back to the Holocaust. I mean, this is not fun and games. This isn't just, you're upset that a war has escalated. They're calling for the destruction of the Israeli state. I just came back from Israel. I was there first 5 years ago. This trip was far different. To see a country so transformed, and the scars of the attacks. I mean, 1,100 plus brutally murdered in ways that we haven't seen, since medieval times. I've watched every minute of footage that Hamas put out there on October 7th. And I think all these kids, and I call them kids because they're not even acting like young adults, they need to go watch that footage and understand what they're even talking about. Because the horror that was inflicted on the Israeli people, and I had a chance to meet with hostage parents. I've had a chance to meet with and share a Shabbos dinner with a family that had 3 son-in-laws have to go off to war in the days following that. And to see, anti-Semitic rhetoric coming out of, children of privilege here in the United States on Ivy League campuses is a slap in the face of every American Jew, every family of a hostage. And we still have 5 American citizens held in Gaza right now, and pray every day that they're still alive. And This is not, a Vietnam protest from 1968. This is a group of overprivileged young people looking for a cause, and they've been polluted by whether it's faculty or TikTok or whatever. Their young impressionable minds have been led to an area of anti-Semitism. People calling for the eradication of Jews. If you filled in, you take Jew out and put any other ethnicity there, there'd be an automatic cancellation of that person. Their careers would be ended. There's a reason that these young people are wearing masks. They're not worried about COVID. They know what they're doing. And we need to get this wiped off America's college campuses. We should have a zero tolerance policy for this. Freedom of speech doesn't mean that you can call for the eradication of a race of people.
What do you make of some of your colleagues in Congress celebrating these protesters, not the violent ones, but protesters on college campuses? You're applauding police action here. Fellow New York Democrats are criticizing police getting involved. I want to read what they posted and get your response. Congressman Jamal Bowman posted this, quote, "As a former educator, I know how dangerous the over-policing and militarization of our schools is. This is shameful and unacceptable. Our kids deserve better, our teachers deserve better, and our schools deserve better." And Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez posted this, quote, "If any kid is hurt tonight, responsibility will fall on the mayor and university presidents. Other leaders in schools have found a safe de-escalatory path. This is the opposite of leadership and endangers public safety, a nightmare in the making." What's your reaction here?
Well, it's very selective what those members say. I mean, Jamal Bowman, to talk about public safety, here's a guy that didn't like a vote that was coming up, so he pulled a fire alarm at the U.S. Capitol. He should have spent time in jail for that, if not faced expulsion himself. Anything he says is laughable, and I don't think he's going to be in Congress very much longer. But when you think about this, we have Jewish students in this country that no longer feel safe on their campuses. I talk to Jews in this country all the time that say that they've never felt anti-Semitism so close to the surface. There's always a subtext to some extent, but now it seems fashionable from the left to be anti-Jew, to be, to talk about the harm to the Jewish people. It's time that we wake up. No American should walk in fear in the greatest country in the history of the world, let alone on a college campus, which is supposed to be a marketplace of free ideas. Yet you have people blockading Jewish students from going to class, blocking entrances. Saw some footage just this morning from UCLA where they stood and prevented a Jewish student from going to class. We wouldn't have tolerated this, for someone trying to segregate our schools, from African American students, and we sure as hell in 2024 should never allow someone to not be allowed to go to their class because they happen to be Jewish. This needs to be stopped, and these university presidents need to be held accountable. I really salute what Congresswoman Stefanik and the House and Labor Committee have done, shining light on what's going on these campuses, because we pour hellish federal money on the big educational industrial complex in this country. And you have a president that wants to cancel loans that these people signed for, might not have had a job attached to the degree program, but he wants to cancel these loans left and right. And the American people, I know my constituents say, hell no, you shouldn't cancel loans. And we need to starve off this when we see this kind of behavior on a college campus. This is supposed to be a place where young people go to learn their vocation, to harness their passion into something that makes them a productive citizen, not to make them a hate monger. And that's what we're finding right now. Way more hate mongers being bred on America's college campuses with this anti-Semitic rhetoric than we have people that are serious about a job. I mean, to listen to these, Columbia, protesters worrying about getting arrested because they have finals. Well, actions have consequences, and you deserve to face the consequences for your actions.
On Tuesday night, when the police went into Columbia, there was a mixture of both students and what Mayor Eric Adams called outside agitators arrested. They weren't affiliated with Columbia University. Do you have any indication of who these outside agitators are?
I have no proof, but let's face it, every time we have a situation in this country where unrest is there, George Soros isn't too far behind, with some of this liberal dark money. You have these dark money organizations that fund, there's plenty of indication they were involved in the Black Lives Matter protests of the summer of 2020, very conveniently in a place where there was great social unrest, pallets of bricks somehow got delivered. There's clearly solicitations out there for paid agitators to go to campuses to demonstrate. There's money funding these efforts to move the students around from campus to campus around New York City. There is clearly a network putting money behind this effort. Why someone would invest in this to create unrest, I really don't understand it myself. I don't see how this helps our country be stronger, especially if they're supporters of this president. But we have to take our campuses back. We have to reimagine what higher education actually is in America. It is supposed to prepare people for jobs in a future in their lives. And right now, I'm not seeing that.
Are you suggesting Democrats in some way are behind paying perhaps these outside agitators?
I didn't say the Democratic Party or Democratic politicians, but there are certainly people that are left-leaning. George Soros's organization, I would not doubt, is part of this in some way, shape, or form. And you'll never know, because you'll never be able to unravel the money. They're not accountable to anybody. And hellish billionaire cash that gets invested and spent through a series of 501c3s and 4s. It's virtually untraceable. And but there's a great theatrical performance going on in an orchestration, and they're preying on impressionable young minds that want to be crusaders, and they have totally led some of these young people down the wrong path.
Congressman, I hear how passionate you are about combating anti-Semitism on college campuses. Have you had the opportunity to talk yet with Education Secretary Miguel Cardona?
I have not yet. I know that Ed and Labor has spent a lot of time tackling that. I don't have the privilege of serving on that committee. I really think it's kind of useless to talk to any secretary in this administration at this point. I mean, we're in an election year. It's a silly season where you're not going to get any concrete action. You're going to get lip service, especially if you're a Republican in the majority of the House trying to call on the administration to do anything. But the president, he can't have it both ways. You can't be anti-Semitism and pro-Hamas protesters. These are Hamas protesters. These are people that are saluting the efforts of a terrorist organization that brought hell down on one of our greatest allies in the world. And the fact that on an American college campus, and sadly on many American college campuses in a growing number, that this is going on is something that all Americans should be ashamed of.
Like you said, this is unrest that has spanned the nation. President Biden did respond to it on Thursday. He said that hate speech and violence in relation to the protesters, he completely condemned that. He also said that these protests are not going to change his policy when it comes to Israel or Gaza. What do you make of his response?
Well, listen, Israel is our greatest ally in the Middle East and arguably our greatest ally in the world. I mean, they're a beacon of freedom and hope. The president needs to stand with them. He can't knuckle under because he's worried about his electoral, fortunes in Michigan, and where with Muslim voters, he cannot turn on Israel. I mean, we need him to stand strong there and stay there. And I mean, if President Trump gets in, it'd be the same situation. We need to. There can't be an inch between Israel and the United States. That is a bond that cannot be broken. So I would hope that the president stands strong with Israel, and he should condemn every iota of anti-Semitic behavior that's going on these campuses, and frankly, call for law and order. That's what this country wants, is to again appreciate the rule of law. we have to have consequences to actions. And in some of these blue states, like the state I live in New York, and have the honor to represent, politicians have eroded the rule of law. We don't have bail, cash bail. People don't have to worry about the actions having consequences. And you're seeing that manifesting on these college campuses. And I fear that in a state like New York, it's going to be worse in a New York or California than it is going to be in a Florida or Georgia, where those protesters, those disruptors are going to pay a price, because there still is consequences for actions in those states, where people know if you're going to get an appearance ticket, walk away, you're probably never going to go back, and there's nothing that the officials can really do about it. It's sad.
Congressman, I had the opportunity to talk to Representative Richie Torres earlier this week. He said he believes the media is whitewashing these protests. He said they're not anti-war, they are pro-war. You just came back from Israel. What do you think is missing from this whole national conversation when it comes to these encampments, when it comes to this unrest on college campuses across the country?
I think I salute Richie Torres, because it's not popular in the left wing of the Democratic Party to be so pro-Israel. He is. He's walked the walk, and I really salute him for that. And he's right. It has been whitewashed. The problem is time has elapsed since October 7th. The American people have a very short, myopic view of the world, and we look what's happened in the last week or 10 days and not what happened last year or 10 years ago. This just happened, I believe, 7 months ago. It can't be forgotten, and I really think every one of these protesters should be forced to sit and watch the footage, and the murder and the death, and the maiming, and the dismemberment, and the burning of bodies that Hamas committed that day. This wasn't a conventional war where there happened to be casualties. This was depraved. Depraved. I go into the Nova Music Festival grounds and seeing the memorial set up for every one of the 370-ish young, beautiful lives that was extinguished that day. It's a visual I'll never forget in my life. And it's the irony here is these are the young people that are roughly the same exact age and in stage of life as these protesters. And people came from the sky, came from the ground, and mowed them down with machine guns because they were Jews. And that's it. This is being whitewashed. That was genocide. A genocide committed on the Israeli people. And these young people have got to wake up and grow up and understand that.
I know you've said you've seen a lot of footage when it comes to these college protests. Have you seen any protester on these encampments involved in this at all protesting Hamas?
No, you don't see people protesting Hamas. These when you hear these jingles like "River to the Sea," these young people, they're joining a chorus that calls for the genocide of the Jewish people in Israel. And some are just completely uninformed, and they are followers, and they want to join a crowd. And they're seeing something that they think is fashionable to, be against. There's a couple viral pieces of footage of two protesters asking each other why exactly they were protesting. And they didn't know, because, they think we're young, idealistic students, therefore this is what we must do. We should see better in America, and certainly for the investment that parents and the government is providing for these institutions, we should see a better administration of campuses than we are.
Congressman Nick Langworthy, I really appreciate the conversation. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you very much, Brittany.